Hello, everybody, and welcome to Taking Control, the ADHD podcast on True Story FM. I'm Pete Wright, and I'm here with Nikki Kinzer.
Hello, everyone. Hello, Pete Wright.
Oh, Nikki, we're continuing our conversation on self-compassion this week with the greatest hits of shame. Oh, shame. The hits that just keep on coming. You're fired up today. That's what I'm hearing.
I am.
Got a lot of that big shame energy.
I do. I want to crush it. As Alan Brown would say.
Crush it. Shame. Crush it. So we're going to do some shame crushing today. In addition, we're going to invite you to head over to takecontroladhd.com. You can get to know us a little bit better. Listen to the show right there on the website or subscribe to the mailing list, and we'll send you an email each time a new episode is released. You can connect with us on Facebook or Instagram or Pinterest at Take Control ADHD, or jump into the Discord community. That's where all the cool people hang out. Just head over to takecontroladhd.com/Discord, and you'll be swept over to the Discord login page. If you don't have a Discord account, you'll be guided through creating an account. But if you do have an account, you can just use your own login, and it'll add you to our public chat server. Now, if you're looking for something a little bit more, you want to sneak in the back way and get access to the triple secret channels, you just need to become a patron. Patreon.com/the ADHD podcast. If you go there and you sign up for a few bucks a month, you are supporting this show. You're supporting the show, and you're giving yourself access to all of our very favorite channels and tiers on the back end of our Discord server. You're getting access to early access to the podcast. You're getting access to the show live streams. If you were already there at the deluxe level or better, you'd be listening to us record this live right now. And that's pretty cool. You could chat along. We have special Q&A segments at the end of each episode. It's fun. It's fun. You should hang out. Patreon.com/the ADHD podcast to learn more. Thank you to all of our members, new and old, who have decided to support this show. Nikki, do we have any news?
Not yet, but it's coming.
No news. News is coming. News is coming. All right. Let's talk shame. We're continuing this conversation last week, as if we stopped in the middle of our conversation last week, and now we're just picking it up, right? We're talking about the Self-Compassion Workbook by Kristen Neff and Christopher Germer. Germer or Germer? Germer. I'm going to say Germer.
I'm going to say Germer.
Yeah, let's go with Germer. So now we're talking about this very special chapter on shame.
Yes, chapter 17.
All right.
Self-compassion and shame, and I'm going to add and ADHD.
Outstanding.
Yes. So, again, a lot of this information is coming from this book, so I want to give them full credit. Definitely check it out. It has great worksheets, or not worksheets, I'm sorry, exercises and different reflections to do. It's not specific to ADHD, but by golly, it could be. It's really good. And I've been talking a lot about it this week with my coaching groups, and just really excited to talk to you about this, Pete. So shame is the feeling that something is fundamentally wrong with us that will render us unacceptable or unlovable. How would you define shame, Pete?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's pretty much it. Shame is that sort of pervasive feeling that I'm not good enough for whatever I'm doing at any given moment, or that everything I've done, I have to feel bad about in some way or another. Like I'm able to find the thing that is worth regret, and I will hang on to that regret all the time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I would add that what I see with clients is the fact that they blame themselves for everything. Mm-hmm. And so the shame comes from, well, this happened and it was my fault. Therefore, I'm a bad person because this is always my fault. It's always something that I did wrong.
Yeah. Which it's so funny when you say those words out loud, because shame is an incredibly egocentric feeling, right? Like it's all about me. Somehow, of course, it's not all about me. And the things that I'm perceiving as wrongs that I've done to the world, most people are probably not thinking about at any given time, except me.
Right.
But that doesn't change the fact that it's very real to my kind of lived experience.
And it's not only real, but it's daily. Like it's happening all the time.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's the distinction with ADHDers is that they're feeling it all the time. So
Hmm.
they've got this heavy load on their back all the time.
Hmm.
It's not just one or two situations. It's like every day I'm doing something wrong.
Right. Right.
And I have an example, and I've been sharing this example. It just happened yesterday, but man, it hit me hard, and it's so I think relevant. In my GPS group, we will chat, as we're doing our work, which sometimes is good and sometimes is bad, but that's a whole nother story. With distraction when you're trying to do work. Um, but we were talking about transitions, and there was a comment around someone feeling really sad and embarrassed that it was taking them so much time to transition between tasks. And I'm guessing, of course, I don't know this for sure. I'm guessing because in their mind, they felt like it was taking too much time.
Hmm.
This can't be normal. Something is wrong with me. Right. So
Right. Right.
I need to have time to transition, but it's too much time and it's my fault.
Yeah.
And, but
Well,
I mean,
because this is paired with the other great SH word, right? Should. This should be taking me less time. Therefore, I should feel shame about it taking as much time as it did me to do this task.
right. Now, if you hearing that and me explaining that for the first time, do you think that that person's a bad person?
No, of course not.
Right? Because it
Yeah.
doesn't make sense, right?
No,
Like
doesn't make sense.
why would that be a bad thing, right?
Right. Right.
So my response was that it's not anything to be ashamed or embarrassed about. In fact, it's something that we want to be proud of. We want to be proud that you know yourself so well that you know how to do your best work.
Well,
And that
and that
means
you are able to predict how long it takes you to do stuff, right? The task takes as long as it takes. At least you can plan around it.
right, but I'm going to clarify that you don't need to know how long the task is going to take. It's
Hmm.
well, I guess with the transition you are.
Yeah,
With the transition, yes, if you know what you need, whether that's 30 minutes, 5 minutes or whatever, right? That's what you're
100%.
saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that that is something to be really proud of, that you know that that's something that I need to do my best work, not something to be embarrassed about.
Mm.
And so if we can flip the script a little bit by this isn't something to be embarrassed about. This is something you need. This is something that you need to do your best work. So we want
Mhm.
to let go of that expectation of that should,
Mhm.
right? Because it doesn't matter. This is how you work. It
Right.
doesn't matter what everybody else is doing or what they need. And the acceptance allows you to release this pressure and move on through the day. And I think that something that we have to be really truthful about is we're not getting that stuff all done in a day anyway, regardless.
Right.
So let's take the shame out of it
Mhm.
because you're not doing it anyway because it's too high of an expectation.
Yeah.
So, I think that there's something about that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And it goes, I mean, there are so many sort of directions to take this in. Part of it is like, what are the lessons that you're learning about yourself in not just how you feel about the work that you're doing, but how you're organizing the work that you're doing? And are there ways you can approach the work practically in order to alleviate some of the emotional baggage that you're carrying into it? Should you break the task down more fully? Should you whatever? How can you find yourself in smaller wins?
Mhm.
In order to move through and not feel bad
Mhm.
about that stuff, right? About
Mhm.
the stuff that you're struggling with. That's
Mhm.
the part that gets me. But I think, mm, well, I'll hold this for a second. Let's go to your next point because I
Okay.
have a point.
Okay. So in the book, they talk about how shame actually has three curious paradoxes. Shame feels blameworthy, but it is an innocent emotion.
Hmm.
Shame feels lonely and isolating, but it is a universal emotion.
Well, and I think the third one is the best. Shame feels permanent and all encompassing, but it is a transitory emotional state that only corresponds to part of who we are. I feel like this is the one that gets me because
Yes.
it unlocks the worst parts of me as cars on the shame train that I'm dragging behind me. That when I'm in a point when I'm working and feeling bad about something that I'm doing, when I'm living under the weight of shame, it unleashes like an increased likelihood of anger or rage when I'm interrupted or when somebody knocks on the door if I'm in the middle of a flow state. Like it makes me inflexible to the signals of the world around me. And it's not that I'm just angry all the time, it's that I'm living under the weight of shame. I already am hating myself. Therefore, it's so much easier for me to hate the world around me.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I think part of that is just all, symptomatic of, kind of living in the world that we live in and dealing with loss of family and dealing with all those kinds of things. But it manifests in shame. It manifests in the shame state that allows the uglier pieces of me to be whole. And I don't love that.
And what's interesting about you saying that is I'm going to actually quote a different book. So this is the Radical Guide for Women with ADHD.
Mhm.
And this is what we're doing in our book club right now. And I highlighted this paragraph and it's exactly, well, close to what you're saying. If your beliefs about ADHD and yourself are negative, you will perceive the world as a more negative, rejecting, hostile place. When this happens, you're likely to expect negative outcomes and hide away to protect yourself from the vulnerability that can actually draw people together.
Yeah. And the inverse of that is also true. Like my perception of is not that the world necessarily sees is a hostile place, but that the world sees me as a hostile resident of it.
Mhm. Mhm.
Because that's shame. Again, that's
Right.
the self-isolation, the egocentric, the I'm the star of my shame world, and everybody should hate me now.
Right.
Put the
Right.
spotlight on me, right?
Yeah,
Right.
right. Well, and I think this number 3 point is really hard for ADHD because it feels so permanent.
It does. Yeah.
Shame feels permanent.
Yeah.
And so it's switching that mindset of trying to figure out how to make it this transitory
Yeah.
emotional state.
Transitory. Right.
Transitory. Yes. So interesting, I think.
Yeah.
And then they go on, and this is actually something that we learned. You actually, a long, long, long time ago, shared the Brene Brown TED Talks.
Yeah. Yeah. Those
And
were really impactful.
impactful,
Right.
still very much so. And this comes from the book, but it also comes from Brene Brown. I mean, this
Mhm.
is where I first heard it, is that, there's this difference between guilt and shame. Guilt
Mhm.
refers to feeling bad about a behavior. I did something bad. Shame is to feel bad about ourselves. So I am bad.
Yeah.
Guilt can actually be productive because it can actually motivate us. We can learn from those situations and apologize if we need to, do something different next time, right?
Mhm.
Shame is unproductive because it paralyzes us and renders incapable effective action. And that is really important, I think, for ADHD to understand is that when we start to feel shame, it paralyzes us and it doesn't move the needle forward.
Mhm.
And especially when you're looking at like uh phone calls you're avoiding, tasks that you're avoiding, things that have this incredible emotional shame around it, it's not helping. It really is stopping you. So if
Mhm.
we can start to kind of unravel or untangle, according to Sari Solden and
Mhm.
Michelle Frank, untangle some of that where we're feeling that shame and start to look at it a little bit differently, then we can start really opening up the door to action with more compassion with ourselves.
Mhm.
So if you make the phone call that you haven't made, and let's say it does go bad, you can have compassion around that and know that you tried,
Mhm.
right? Or whatever it might be. But if we sit in the shame, then we don't even make the phone call and we keep feeling bad. But what if we make the phone call and that person is like, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry I didn't call you.
Mhm.
Like I've been so busy," or whatever. Like we just don't know until we have that action. So that's my point there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, and I think it is For me, I get like when I'm at my best, I get into it's like Schrodinger's phone call. Do you know about Schrodinger's cat?
No.
So this is like a philosophical thought experiment where there is a hypothetical cat in a box, and the box is closed, and you can't see whether the cat is alive or dead in the box. And maybe there are some ways that the thought experiment is played out where they say, like, there's poison in the box, and you don't know if the cat's alive or dead because you can't know if the cat has eaten the poison. All you know is while the cat is in the box and the lid is closed, it is both alive and dead, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
Schrodinger's phone call, you don't know if the cat or if the call is going to go well or it's going to go poorly. All you're doing is painting the picture of the dead cat in your head and living as if it is dead, when in fact, the call could go great. It
Right.
really could. It could go well and poorly at exactly the same state because you haven't taken action yet. And so that's really the whole idea, is to present this state of actionlessness, that you have to be aware of the fact that you're standing at a fork, and it's up
Yeah.
to you to define. You have agency about whether or not you pick up the phone and dial it, or if you leave it on and just continue to suffer about this story that you can't ever write the end to.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. I've never heard that before, but
Oh,
man, that is
Schrodinger's cat.
so true.
Yeah,
So
it's
true.
amazing. Yep.
So, a long, long time ago, when we talked about shame, you talked about a quote that came, I think, from one of your friends.
That
And
was
we know
Dr.
that
Dodge. Dr.
Dr.
Dodge.
Dodge,
Yep.
friend of the show,
Mhm.
and shame is maintained by silence. Do you remember the quote?
Well, yeah, it's shame hates the sun, right? Shame
That's what it
hates
is.
the
Shame
sun.
hates the sun.
Yeah. When you live in shame, you're living in the dark. And when you shine light on whatever it is you feel ashamed about, it withers and dies. And the whole metaphor is about, like, just pick up the phone, tell the person how you're feeling, be open about the state of the world, of your world and your actions and where you are at a project or whatever.
Hmm.
Once you essentially pull the Band-Aid off, right,
Yes.
then things are allowed to begin healing, but nothing can begin healing until you shine a light on it.
Quote here from the book: self compassion is the ultimate antidote to shame. By relating to our mistakes and kindness rather than self judgment, remembering our common humanity instead of feeling isolated by our failures, and being mindful of our negative emotions. I feel bad, rather identifying with them. I am bad. Self compassion directly dismantles the shame. And if you remember last week, we talked about these three areas of self compassion. We talked about self kindness. We talked about the mindfulness piece of it.
It was
And
self-kindness, common humanity, and mindfulness.
thank you. Yes.
Mhm,
And that's what that sentence that I just read is doing. It's putting that self compassion around that shame.
mhm.
So the goal or the mission is to practice responding with compassion rather than shame. And I want to again highlight that there's lots of great exercises to practice in this book, and certainly want you to check it out. I'm going to switch gears a little bit, going to a different book that I've been studying. I'm like a librarian this
I know,
week.
look at you.
Yes. So, in the book with the Radical Guide for Women with ADHD by Sari Solden and Michelle Frank, this quote, this whole thing I'm going to talk about, it struck me from the first time I read it was like several years ago. It was pre COVID, and it's hit me in a way that I continue to think about it, to this day. I think it's that powerful. The crux of the ADHD journey has as much to do with letting go of the false beliefs you have about yourself as it does with adding tools and strategies. This is what you need to recognize first and foremost, because this link, the one that binds your challenges to your worth, is far worse than any symptom of inattention could ever be. What does this mean to you, Pete?
Well, I kind of hate it, because it's kind of paralyzing to me a little bit, because it is an observation of an awareness that I know is true, but really struggle with personally. right? That I know that letting go of false beliefs that you have about yourself is critical. And I have yet to figure out how to do it myself, in my lived experience, reliably and repeatedly. Do you know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? Like, it's just
Yes.
hard. It's just hard. And I hear this all the time. Like, you need to just, you have to let go of those things, let go of the feelings of negativity and shame. And I'm sure I've said them on this show. You've got to let go of those things. And yet w- it's, it's an impassable, you know, canyon of grief and doubt. And it's incredibly hard to do. Right. And
Do
I
you
have,
believe you can do it?
yeah, I'm sure down the road there's a version of me that has
What
been
about
able to do
today?
it. Yeah, I don't know.
Right?
I don't know.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Like,
Yeah.
I get it. I get
But what
they're
about
great
like
words.
hour by hour?
Mhm.
I mean, if we break it down from not, oh, this is the person I am, where I can just like always separate these, but just right now in this
Yeah.
hour, is there something that I can do that's going to make this work for me and not against me?
Yes. Yeah. And I could say, I think the secret to that and where you're going is probably like whatever's in front of me minute by minute, right? Even more, but like really celebrating capability minute by minute. Like right now, I have to edit a podcast. I know how to do that. I believe in my set of skills and the tools and technologies that I have in front of me to be able to do that. As long as I don't look up, right? As long as I don't look up and gaze around me at other things that could distract me from that effort, I feel like I can let go of any false beliefs that sneak in about my
But I
capacity on that
want you
job.
to let it go even if you look up,
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying is it's so
right?
hard,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And so
So if
I
you
guess
look up, it's still okay.
yeah, yeah. But if I look up and I see
I can
something in
physically
the
see you getting uncomfortable.
no, but it's true. Like it's really legit, and I can feel
Yeah.
myself. Like I can look up and I look in a I look at a Discord chat and I see somebody post something that I feel like I should have an answer to, but I don't have an answer to. So I guess I better go back to bed. Do you know what I'm saying? Like that's the part that is a constant like mountain. It's not like I'm climbing a mountain to be able to let go of all my false beliefs. Is that there are a bazillion mountains, right? There's always another mountain. And when I get to the other side of that mountain, new mountains are cropping up as if they're just being invented right there. There are always new mountains. And so I think, I guess in that light, um, my version of self acceptance is to realize as soon as I conquer that mountain, as I climb that mountain, that there are going to be new mountains to climb. And I just have to keep climbing them.
With
Don't stop
acceptance and
climbing.
compassion.
Yeah, knowing that
Right.
that's the mountain, is finding acceptance and compassion. When I get to the top of it about whatever thing it is, I just have to internalize the fact that I know that about myself. There will always be mountains. I will always have to be looking out on the horizon.
And
Um,
that's the humanity of it.
yeah,
Because
yeah,
it's
maybe
not
that's it.
just you. It's not just you. Everyone as humans, ADHD, no ADHD, we all have mountains.
Yeah,
And so if we bury ourselves in shame and negative self-talk, then we stay there.
yeah.
And we keep
I,
believing that this is the way it's always going to be hard. This is always going to be this way. But if we
well,
can be more compassionate with ourselves and understand this is a universal feeling
mhm,
and this is life. Life is messy,
right, right.
you know? It's just messy and gross sometimes, but it
Yeah.
also can be beautiful
Well, and
and
that
joyful.
the the challenges are not consistent. Right? Like, I
Right.
look at my task list today. I'm looking at Pete's today, and I see a whole lot of things on there that are fine. They're totally fine. And I see a second set of things that are totally fine in any other context, but I haven't gotten myself to do them, and that's the shame. There's nothing in here that is outside of my scope of ability. It's just I am like I can find somebody. It's I'm not gonna lie. It's my own mother. I've let my mother down on something that I've just haven't done because I have continually reprioritized other things in front of it. And it's against my self-interest. It's just one of those tasks. It's not a hard
So what
task.
would you tell me if I just said that to you? How would you respond to me?
How would I respond to you? I'd say, well, I would tell you, it's okay. I'd tell you
Mhm.
it's fine. Like, it's okay. It'll get done when you have space to do it. Like, it's not a project that's on a hard deadline. In fact, there's kind of a fuzzy, unknown deadline out there that is just kind of out there because it has to do with, you know, federal regulations and legislation and things like that, and that are being set by the government. Who knows when those deadlines will be set? Um, and so it's probably going to be just fine. I have the papers that I need to work on sitting on my desk, and it's not like it's out of sight. I have it. I look at it every day, and um, and so it's going to be fine. It's going to be fine.
So what do you think?
Well, but it's me, and it's my mother.
Right, right.
Yeah.
But
How
does
could I
it
be such
feel
a terrible
different? I
son?
mean, does it feel different? When you said I have shame around it, you
Yeah.
stopped. You just said, I have this task and I have shame around it, and it has to do with my mother. And
Hmm.
then when I asked you, what would you say to me? You started not only being more compassionate about it, but you also started like thinking about how to get started on it.
Hmm.
So you
Yeah.
kind of moved yourself forward after you kind of like gave me a little bit of a break, like, hey, don't worry about it,
Yeah. Yeah.
and start kind
Well,
of
and
seeing it as it is.
but this is the thing we started uncovering last week, that when you're talking about shame, like I like you more than I like myself in this context, right? So it's easier for me to
But
be forgiving.
I want you to like yourself
And
just as
that's the
much,
mountain. That's the mountain.
more.
Yeah.
Actually, I want you to like
Yeah.
yourself more,
Right.
because that's a really important piece, because that goes into like people pleasing.
Hmm.
When we say yes because we like that other person more, we are doing it at the expense of ourselves. And
Yes.
that is not okay. And
Right.
sometimes you have to disappoint other people to protect yourself.
Yes.
I want
Yeah.
you to like yourself more. And we're going to get you there, because
Well,
we're going
and
to take this shame, we're going to kick it to the
I know
curb.
we're gonna crush it. And that's what I've
Yeah.
been thinking about all week, and why when we first got on the call, I was like exhausted because like it's been a week of kind of sorting through those feelings around everything that's on the list and stuff that isn't. Is like, what is it that's causing that kind of negative self-talk, and to at least reflect for people who are listening. Like, one of the other things I've been thinking about a lot is the perception that I have of myself versus the perception I have of myself as a podcaster that other people hear when they hear me. And I feel like uh I feel like it's okay to bleed a little bit and say, this is just crushing. There's no facade. There's no, like, this is like lived experience every day, is figuring out this mountain metaphor, right? That,
Hmm.
and it's real and legit. And my God, you guys, I get it. I get it. And
So we deal with self kindness,
yeah,
that common humanity, and mindfulness of it,
yeah,
right? Yeah.
right, right.
And I want to say again, this is why this one this quote from the Radical Guide, I think, is so important. And I'm going to say it again. This is what you need to recognize first and foremost, because this link, the one that binds your challenges to your worth,
Hmm.
is far worse than any symptom of inattention could ever be. That is so important to understand, that that task for your mom, and your symptom of, for whatever reason, avoiding the task, right, is around ADHD. It's hard getting started. I mean, all of these things
Any
that we
number
could,
of things. Yeah.
any
Right.
number of reasons that it could tie back to your ADHD, but it's never going to be worth your, or it's never going to be, worth your self-worth.
Hmm.
Like it does not attach that.
Yeah.
Or we have to just dismantle it, I guess. I'm not
Yeah.
sure exactly what I'm trying to say here, but
Right.
But it's
Well,
such
and
an
that's
important piece.
it's huge. It's huge. And it's so easy to like I can legitimately look at other people and say like and counter every one of their feelings of negative self-worth and
Mhm.
their shame and their compassion like I and find compassion and help them find compassion, but this is like looking in a mirror is a nightmare scape.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. Wow, good stuff, Pete.
Well, I hope so. I don't know.
Thank you
I
for
don't know.
walking through this with me because I know that this was a little it's uncomfortable because I am putting I am putting the
Yeah.
spotlight on you and asking you hard questions, and I appreciate you being vulnerable on the show to answer them.
Well, well, I hope it's useful for someone out there to listen and know you're not alone because holy crap, you're not alone.
Well, and this
Um,
isn't just a one and done thing. This is something that was also said in our group that uh, acceptance is not just, oh, I'm accepting this. I'm
yeah,
done. Like
right.
it doesn't work
Oh,
that way.
I'm valuable now.
Yeah. And
It's
it's
not
just, I
how it
mean,
works.
and it's the same thing with this. Like, oh, I've listened to this podcast. I have no more shame. Like,
Yeah,
I get, yeah, that's not what's happening.
yeah. Like I'm
Um,
ticking off. Oh, those are false beliefs. Okay, now I get
right.
it.
Yeah. Yeah. My hope is that it brings the listener awareness so that they can start to kind of identify where they see this in themselves and be
Yeah,
kinder
yeah.
and be able to walk through it just like you did with the mom's task,
Hmm.
with that task for your mom, like be
Yeah,
able to kind of see, okay, wait a minute, let me tell a different story. And I love the
yeah,
cat in the box.
yeah. You don't know
That's really good too. You really don't know
Schrodinger's
until you
cat.
open the box. Yeah. Yeah. Good
Yeah.
stuff. Thank you.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for hanging out and listening to the show. We appreciate you downloading, listening, all the great things you do with the show. Thanks for your time and your attention. Don't forget, if you have something to contribute to the conversation, head over to the Show Talk channel in our Discord server, and you can join us right there by becoming a supporting member at the deluxe level or better. On behalf of Nikki Kinzer, I'm Pete Bright, and we'll see you right back here next week on Taking Control, the ADHD podcast.